Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek here with Figure It Out Baseball. We've got a great Figure It Out Baseball podcast today. We're lucky enough today to be joined by TJ Wharton. He is currently the recruiting coordinator, hitting coach, and sports performance coordinator at Maryville College, which is a Division III school in Maryville, Tennessee. He's a guy with a really interesting background and a lot of cool stuff to get into today. Just really, really interesting, what things that he's gone through and kind of the path that he's taken. And but I'll give you some background on Coach Wharton before we jump into questions with him, and then we'll get to him. So he is a Lutz, Florida native, 2011 high school graduate. He started his playing career at UNC Greensboro. He was there during a head coaching change. Ended up transferring to Guilford Tech Community College, junior college in North Carolina. At Guilford Tech, he was an all-conference and all-region player. From there, he moved on to play at Catawba College, which is a Division II school in North Carolina as well. He was there in the springs of 2014 and 15. In the summer of 2014, he was one of the few players in the country lucky enough to play in the Cape Cod Summer Collegiate League. And that season in 2014, he hit over 300 in a limited amount of time there, but hit over 300 in the Cape Cod League. That's pretty darn good. Graduated from Catawba in 2017. After a little bit of time doing some other things. In the fall of 2015, he worked out and coached at Catawba. In 2016, he spent a year playing pro ball, played for several independent league teams that summer. And then in 2017, officially became an assistant coach at Catawba. Graduated from Catawba in 2017. 2018, the spring of 2018, he was an assistant coach at Eckerd College, which is a Division II school in St. Petersburg, Florida. Pretty close to home, I believe. In the summer of 2018, he was a catching instructor at IMG Academy, really well-known academy in Bradenton, Florida. In 2019, he was an assistant coach at St. Petersburg College, which is a Division I junior college in St. Petersburg, Florida. In the summer of 2019, he was the head coach of the Licking County Settlers in the Great Lakes Summer Collegiate League, really good Summer Collegiate League, Wood Bat League. His team finished second in the league this past summer. In August of 2019, he got his master's degree from Ohio University, got his master's degree in coaching, and he was actually hired also in August to be the recruiting coordinator and sports performance coordinator at Maryville College. Coach Wharton, among other things, is a certified strength and conditioning coach. I spent other summers as a collegiate summer league coach, so he's a guy with a lot of experience, a lot of different backgrounds. He was also something I guess I didn't mention in there. He was a bullpen catcher and performance science assistant for the New York Yankees. Did that parts from November 2015 until August 2019 when he was hired at Maryville. So he's a guy that's got experience at a lot of different levels as a player and as a coach. Got a unique perspective. Got a pretty unique background, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. But Coach Wharton, I want to just welcome you to the podcast today, and I just really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you. It's definitely quite the mouthful, and a lot of my friends are always asking me, so what are you doing now?
That's kind of the life of the college coach, isn't it, right? Especially as a young coach, you're kind of always bouncing around from place to place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. It's been a wild ride, but definitely happy to be here at Maryville.
So, TJ, I usually like to start with some things from people's bio, but with you, I'm going to start from something that doesn't show up in the bio, and I hope you don't mind talking about this, and if you do, you can certainly tell me. But you had a little bit of a unique childhood, and just different than most people, kind of what you experienced, and then in going through college. But let's just start with your childhood, if you don't mind. You lived with your grandparents, right? You were raised by your grandparents as a kid.
Correct, yeah, and so is my wife. We met in high school, and it was one of the reasons our relationship was and is still so strong is because it's a unique situation that we've both been through and are still going through. So my mom was a huge part of my life growing up, but she passed away a few years ago with ovarian cancer, and I still think about her every day. But my grandparents, I call them my parents. They've been there at every turn.
That's amazing. And whoever raises you just having people that are there for you and care about you and do right things for you and by you are really important. And from what I know about you, TJ actually, I guess I should mention this. TJ's got videos on the Figure It Out Baseball website. You can check out his catching stuff that he's got on there right now at figureitoutbaseball.com. And I hope we're, lucky enough to get some other videos from Coach Wharton in the future. But you seem like a guy that's, got a good head on your shoulders and it has a good perspective on things. So obviously your grandparents did a very good job. So let's next jump to UNC Greensboro, another kind of unique experience you got there, and you were there during a head coaching change. What was that like, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit?
It was so obviously my grandparents they loved me to death, but the only thing that I would have to say is I definitely was spoiled. I did not have too many troubles to go through my childhood, and even when I got to college, I was very blessed with everything that was given to me, and there wasn't any obstacles I had to overcome. It's just everything came pretty easy. And then when Coach Jarrett came on staff, I knew some things were about to change because the scholarship I was given at the time was definitely more than my abilities were at the time. So I knew some things were about to happen. I wish the transition would have been better, but the transition from UNCG to Gilbert Tech was real quick, and it definitely started the ball rolling of some challenges coming in my life. So,
and I'm sure there are a lot of other players, possibly even players that are listening to this or coaches listening to this that have had players go through this. You were basically pulled into the Greensboro office and told you've got to transfer. This isn't going to work out for you, right?
Yeah, and Coach Jarrett, he's at Notre Dame now. He's one of the best coaches in the country. I think he knows that he could have handled the situation a little better, but you need to do what you need to do to get that program off the ground. And as you can see, UNCG has been top 5 in the country for hitting for the past few years. So, I mean, he definitely knew what he was doing. But in my situation, it was definitely a little bit late and tough, but it just, I've talked to him since, and it was definitely a blessing in disguise for sure. So anyone who's going through that, just understand you just got to put your head down and go on to the next step of your life.
So how did you rebound from that going to Guilford Tech? Did it kind of shake your confidence a little bit, or how did you, what was your personal response when you were, your world's kind of turned upside down? You've now got to transfer. You're going to a junior college when you were supposed to be at this Division I school. What did that do to your confidence, and how were you able to rebound from that to have a couple of really good seasons at Guilford Tech?
So I played one season at Guilford Tech, and I did pretty well. Like I said, my support group has been huge, and I talk about that all the time, is just having people in your life that are going to be there for you. I made sure that I stayed close to Greensboro. Guilford Tech's only a 15-minute drive from campus. I actually stayed in the same apartment. But I stayed with my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. She was there for me every step of the way, telling me so that she knew I could make it, do better things. And the same thing with my parents. They were always there. I mean, there's definitely times where you're going to look at it and you want to give up, but they are the ones that really kept me going and keeping my confidence as high as it was.
That's really cool. And you got to play pro ball for a year, something a lot of guys don't get to do. And, same kind of thing there, if you don't mind talking about that, because I think there are probably people that have maybe a different view of pro ball. I mean, you played pro ball. You played for 3 different teams, right? In the summer of from the spring to summer of 2016. Is that right? 3 different teams.
Right. It was definitely a wild ride. I started with the Evansville Otters, the Frontier League. Got cut in spring training. Went to the Pecos League, who people love to joke about, but honestly, that was one of the best times of my life because I actually went with one of my good friends from UNC Greensboro, and we both hit over 400, if that tells you what the league is like. But
doesn't that mean that you just got a lot better as time went on?
Well, the one thing I love telling people is, regardless of what we could be in the room with Barry Bonds, but I have a better professional batting average than Barry Bonds. So I love saying that.
That's awesome.
I after that, I got the chance to go to the Ottawa Champions, play for Halamir, former National League Manager of the Year for the Astros. That was a really cool experience. I was there for a month, so.
That's awesome. And then you jumped into coaching. So is coaching kind of something that you always saw yourself doing when you finished playing, or is that something that kind of, as you went on and went through, you went to 3 different colleges, that's something that sort of came on later for you?
It definitely came on later. I knew that I wanted to be involved in baseball for my entire life. I knew that's something that I wanted to do. But my avenue up until I got done playing, I really thought I was going to be a strength and conditioning coach. And yeah, I am still now, but I'm definitely a baseball coach first. And it's just more of the time that I get to spend with the athletes. I don't get me wrong, I love baseball more than anything, but when you look at the amount of time that you get to spend with athletes, I mean, it's the actual coach that is there with you day in, day out, and that's the experience that I love.
Yeah, at lower levels, whether or not people realize this, coaches end up wearing multiple hats, and at the pristine Division I levels, you have different people to really do about everything they raised to do. And at the lower levels, I know it was this way when I coached at a couple of different junior colleges. You are the strength coach, you're the academic advisor, you're everything. I mean, you're doing everything. You're field maintenance, you're doing everything for these guys, and it's something that obviously you are totally involved in and engulfed in all the time. So your wife that's been with you through pretty much all of this, playing career, coaching career. How do you balance, being married and also being at a level of baseball where you do wear all these hats? How does that work just on a family dynamic?
So the past couple of years when we were down, we actually moved back down to the Tampa area just to be close to our grandparents again, while I was finishing my master's program. And those 2 years were pretty tough on us relationship-wise, just because of she was the breadwinner of the house, and she was doing fantastic with her job, but I was the one spending the most time away, and I was making virtually no money. So that really put a strain on our relationship. But she was the one, because there's definitely times where I was just like, look, Taylor, I just want to, I actually want to be able to provide for us. Just let me be a high school teacher, high school coach, and I can get some money on the table for us. But she's like, no way. That's not what I see you doing. I know that you're going to be a great college coach. And I give her all the credit, because if it wasn't for her, I definitely would not have made it here to Maryville. So
it's in almost every one of the podcasts that I record here with Figured Out, anytime we start talking about someone's career path there, it seems like almost every college coach has gone through that. And I don't say that for any reason than to say, like, it's not all glory. To be, being a college coach is really cool, and it's really cool to tell people, hey, this is my full-time job. I'm a baseball coach. But there's a lot that comes with it that people don't realize, and I think almost every coach out there has experienced that job that pays peanuts, and where you have a hard time really supporting your family. I think almost every coach has gone through saying, I need to do something different to be able to provide for my family. And the coaches that stick it out almost always, especially the ones that are married, it's the spouse that a lot of times is there to say, like, no, this is what you need to be doing. So that's awesome to know that you have that kind of support, and have somebody that's kind of been there with you through everything you've gone through. So Tennessee, how'd you end up in Maryville? How did that all go down? Did you know that the head coach prior, or was that something you just kind of applied for out of the blue and got it?
Well, as in anything in life, it's all about connections. It was a wild ride, because I get done with my season up in the Great Lakes. My wife's uncle has a cabin in the Poconos, and so I drove over to Pennsylvania after the season was done, and I see Tyler Gillum. He has a pretty big presence in the ABCA world, head coach of the Savannah Bananas. He tweeted out that one of his buddies was looking for a full-time hitting coach. And it just so happened that the year before, I actually just, randomly reached out to him on Twitter, and we had breakfast and created that relationship. So once I saw that tweet, I reached out to him, and he's like, no way, you're the perfect guy for the job just because you're going to be the strength coach too. And I was like, okay. And then we get into, he puts us in a group chat with Coach Helton here at Maryville. And then we find out that we've already met each other. We had been to a Swiffle workout together. It's a travel ball down in Fort Myers area. And that just got the ball rolling, and that's been a perfect fit ever since. And I can't thank Coach Helton enough for bringing me on staff here.
Yeah, there's so many times, just like you said, it all comes down to the relationships that you make and the people that you know and kind of who you're in contact with. And a lot of times somebody else hears of a job or somebody else knows of an opening, and you're kind of in the right place at the right time. I want to talk a little bit about, TJ, about the blog that you have, and I want to open things up on that side of things. So you've got a blog, and you blog about some different things that you do within the game and as a coach, and kind of things that coaches deal with. What made you start that? What was that something that you had heard other coaches start, and you thought it'd be just a cool experience, or something that you did to kind of make other people more familiar with you, or what was kind of behind getting that started?
I started this summer because I figured it was just another way to get my story out there to because one of the things in the hiring process is it's tough hiring people you don't know. A lot of people, head coaches, have the luxury of hiring people that they've worked with in the past, and that's how a lot of jobs get filled. So it was just my thought process of if I could get something out there that shows what type of coach I am and who I am as a person, it might be a little bit easier for whatever coach needs to hire me, so he actually has an idea of who I am. That's what got the idea rolling, but also figuring out that I've had a lot more engagement with my former players from writing the blog, and that's been really refreshing, and it's even helped my relationships with the players here at Maryville, and that just them knowing exactly everything that I've gone through, because I can't count how many times I just say something, they're like, I had no idea you went through that, because when you're going through stuff in college, it kind of just seems like woe is me at first, because it's like, I can't believe I have to go through this. And just letting the players know that everyone is going through something, and there's always going to be someone going through something worse than you. And just the one of the past blogs was just, I'm there for you. That's the biggest thing I love about being coaching, is just that I can be there for these guys just whenever they need me.
Is that the draw to coaching, the relationships that you develop with players? And obviously baseball is baseball. It's what you like. It's what you like being in. But why coaching specifically? Is that the reason why you want to coach as opposed to, scout or something like that, where you're really not involved with players? Is that kind of the draw to coaching for you?
100%. I go back to, because Coach Gant at Catawba College, he's probably the best college coach in the country that no one knows about. He's been in the past 10 years, he's been to 3 World Series. My senior year, we lost the national championship. But there was one moment where it was actually in the summer of 14 when my mom passed away. And, I'm playing in a small summer league. It's called the Carolina, Virginia Summer League. And I get a call 2 weeks after my mom passes. I'm going to the Cape Cod League. We win it all. And I'm just on cloud 9. I never thought this would have happened. And when I get back there to Catawba in the fall, there was a moment where I had an absolute, just complete breakdown. And I struck out, and just everything started rushing towards me at one moment. And with some of the actions I did, I probably should have been thought about getting kicked off the team. I threw my bat. I was just cursing up a storm. But Coach Gant knew what I was going through. And if you know Coach Gant, it takes a lot for him to throw an arm over the shoulder. He's tough on you, but it's because he loves you. And we had a long talk, and he brought me some people to talk to. And I go back to that moment a lot about why I love coaching, because of the impact that he's had on me, and that specific moment about how huge it was in my life. So
that's awesome. So who would you say has been the biggest influence on you as a baseball person? Now that you're in coaching, who's been the biggest influence on your career? Was it him? Was it one of the other coaches you've had through the years? Was it somebody from high school?
It was definitely Coach Gant, because the amount of mixture of just the hard-nosed, old-school mentality, but being on the cutting edge. Because with my relationship with the Yankees, I took the coaching staff to tour the minor league facility when we were down there playing in 2017, and he just saw something on the wall, and he decided to email them. And it ended up being Yaktertek, one of the leaders in pitch design, ball tracking for pitching. And he was actually one of the first colleges to ever purchase a unit. And you would see Coach Gant, he's up in his 50s, but he's always searching for the next thing, but also keeping that old school mentality. It's something to see for sure.
And obviously that's a big part of the reason he's been successful, and that's the technology and all the technology out there is, it's pretty well known that that's a big thing in pro ball, and it's getting more and more into all levels of college baseball, and it's something that you've got a pretty good bit of background in, correct? Just kind of working with technology, different types of technology around the game. In fact, I mean, you're a performance science assistant with the Yankees. Let me ask you first about that. What is a performance science assistant? What did you do with the Yankees?
It's just like anything else in my life. It's been a crazy story, because what I did was I just caught bullpens. I ended up catching rehab pens whenever I was home from college, because there was no one at the minor league site. And my dad was good friends with the chiropractor of the Yankees, so he recommended my name. And so one of the first pens I actually caught was Domingo Germán coming off of Tommy John. And so that was my main job at first. And I always was there out of season, and they would kind of just pay me as I could. But once spring training started, I had to be under contract, and they didn't have a role to give me. So it was in 2018. It was spring training was about to start, so I was just going around the complex saying bye to everyone. And then John Kremer, he was the head of the performance science department at the time, and he was actually the last person I said bye to. And he he stopped me. He's like, hey, you're not leaving. I need you. I have a job for you. I was like, okay. So I ended up being the bullpen catcher for different types of bullpens of anything using technology, but I also helped out with this past year with the implementation of every minor league hitter for the Yankees uses Kinetics now. And I would set up Rapsodo for the bullpens in the morning, and I would do all those. I wore a bunch of hats while I was there. So
really cool. So was that kind of your first introduction to a lot of the different tech that's out there, working with the Yankees, or had you already gotten some familiarity from what you had got, different coaching stops?
I was familiar with it, but the biggest thing I noticed was there was very few people, and still today I would say it's definitely growing a lot, but the technology has been there for a few years, but the application of it hasn't been known. Because when I first started with the Yankees, especially in 18, they were taking down a bunch of data points and everything like that, but the application of it wasn't very clear to me. And it wasn't until 2019 that I started reading more Driveline, Kretsch Performance, and just reading as much as I could about all this stuff that the application became real to me, and actually seeing quick adjustments, especially with watching some of the coaches work with Rapsodo and how quick pitching adjustments they can make. It's fascinating.
So can we get into that a little bit? I'd like to just talk about some of the different types of tech that you've been around and some things you're familiar with, because I know that you have blogged also in the past about understanding just what you're seeing, because it's almost like you can really be overwhelmed with the data that you receive, and really, unless the coach knows what to do with that data, it's kind of useless. So
Right.
what do you want to talk about first? Diamond Kinetics, Rapsodo, each one?
I can talk about Rapsodo just because I've been around people more that actually understand the application of it. But there's so many different metric points or data points when looking at a Rapsodo report that you have to understand how they all interact with each other. Because when TrackMan first came around, all you heard was spin rate, spin rate, spin rate. But now you're figuring out that spin rate is only a piece of the puzzle, and that you have to look at, you have to look at spin direction, spin efficiency, and then you have to look at hand position using ergotronic. So these are all things that I've learned over months of working with the Yankees, and while they were doing pitch design and listening to podcasts from Driveline and all of that. So it's really tough to, really pinpoint on it. But the biggest thing I can tell you, if you're going to purchase a Rapsodo unit, you have to, like I said in my previous blog, I said you have to go to conferences, you have to listen to or read blog posts from Driveline, how to actually use Rapsodo for pitch design, because there's so much that goes into it that, it's going to take months to really figure it all out.
Let's even just talk about that phrase, pitch design. And this is, for people that maybe, I like to get into things and talk about things and give people a better idea of just what the heck we're talking about, and people that really may not be familiar with it, people that are just baseball fans that are interested, that may not have an opportunity to really use these things. So first of all, tell me, kind of talk about what a Rapsodo does and what types of data a Rapsodo is collecting.
So Rapsodo, it is, you put it in front of you, 15 feet in front of the plate. It'll gather all the metric points that it gathers are velocity, spin rate, spin direction, spin efficiency, horizontal and vertical break, release height, and I know I'm missing a few, but those are the ones that coming off the top of my head. But they all interact with each other. You can't just pinpoint one of those. You have to understand how they all work together.
And what does the phrase pitch design mean? I think it puts probably a picture in people's heads. But what does pitch design mean exactly when the Yankees, for example, are working on pitch design with their pitchers? What exactly are they working on?
It's so using all those metrics, a lot of pitchers are throwing pitches that they have learned in the past and that have seemed to work for them coming out of the hand, and they look like they break a lot, and so just the naked eye, they've looked good in the past. But something that with Rapsodo that they've been able to use is that understanding if you have a high spin rate and a good spin efficiency, that you're more likely to work up in the zone. And we would rather have most pitchers who are working up in the zone, you'd rather have a hard breaking curveball that breaks straight down. And that goes into tunneling. If you've seen the Pitching Ninja, they do tunneling all the time on their Twitter page. But it's basically just, it's making these pitches look the exact same until they're about to get to you. So there's a lot of times where pitchers have elite metrics, but they're not using them to their fullest potential.
And that would mean elite metrics not using it to their potential. So that would mean a guy with a high spin rate, high spin efficiency who instead of throwing his fastballs at the top of the zone is throwing them at the bottom of the zone, or maybe doesn't have a breaking ball that really works with his fastball type. Is that what you mean by that?
Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. What the heck is spin efficiency? I got a pretty good idea. Like I know I can. Spin rate is obviously how fast, how many RPMs, right, for the ball. Spin direction would mean, like on a clock, is the ball spinning 6 to 12, or is it, is it spinning a little bit sideways? What is spin efficiency exactly, TJ?
Spin efficiency is that when throwing a baseball, there's two different types of spin that affect the movement of the baseball, and it's transverse and gyro. Transverse spin is the spin that is actually being used in the direction of the baseball, and gyro spin is the spin. It's spin that is not moving the baseball, so it's not in terms of actually influencing the direction of the baseball. So when the best example that I always tell people is that if you have a 100% spin efficient fastball, that means that you're throwing a true four-seam fastball. There's not going to be any movement in any sort of direction. And then once you start getting more towards the two-seam fastball, some of that spin is not going to be correlated to directly keeping that ball on the plane, so it's going to have a little bit of movement, and that's where the spin efficiency starts going down towards like the 90 and 85 direction. And most two-seam fastballs are in the low 90s.
So can an inefficient spin rate, or however I would say that, can that be effective? Like, can that be a good thing, or is it always a bad thing if something is not really efficient?
No, it's not. And that's the biggest thing, that like it's you've got to just keep reading from the experts and figuring out what's good and what not. If you have a low spin rate fastball, then it's not ideal to have 100% spin efficiency. You can have it to tail, and if you throw more of a two-seam, so if your fastball has that like a 90% spin efficiency, then you definitely want to be throwing a slider rather than a 12-6, because they will keep on the same plane longer. And this is just stuff that I've learned from overhearing from the experts, and it seems that, and that's one of the things. A great follow on Twitter, is actually Ian Kadish. He's the big league strength conditioning coordinator, and he was my intern coordinator back in college. But this is all coming from a hitting coach, and I truly believe that you have to understand every single facet of the game to be the best coach for your players. So if I'm saying anything wrong, if anyone listens to this, if I'm a little bit wrong about spin efficiency, like, please give me some forgiveness. I am a hitting coach. This is just stuff that I've learned from down the road.
And it's just, to me, it's interesting just to talk about what a Rapsodo can do and the different things about it. And obviously we're talking pitching. We're a couple of people that understand hitting much better probably than pitching. But I like you said, I like to understand different parts of the game, and I realize that pitching is not a strength of mine, so I like to talk about it. I like to ask some questions about it, and especially a guy that's kind of been around the Yankee bullpen. I'm sure you've heard some things that the other people, could benefit from. So if you don't mind, we'll talk about, I have a couple other questions about the pitching end of it, and then maybe we can get into some, how hitters use Rapsodo as well. So with a pitcher, if there's a young pitcher listening to this, high school pitcher or younger, who doesn't have access to a Rapsodo, how can a young kid who doesn't have this type of tech, how can he figure out what kind of a pitcher he is and what pitches he should be throwing? Because one of the things that you pitchers do with the Rapsodo and the pitch design thing is basically saying, okay, this is the type of pitcher you are, so this is how you can have the most success. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How can a young pitcher figure out what kind of pitcher he is and what he should be throwing? you have any suggestions?
My first suggestion would be just really focus on development of velocity before you hone in on trying to get your arsenal to where it needs to be, because the lowest hanging fruit of any pitcher is just definitely velocity. So if you're a young pitcher, I know it's tough training for velocity because of arm injury, but there's tons of new data out there, and that's one I didn't mention yet is Modus, and one of the leaders in using Modus is Casey Mulholland at Kinetic Pro Performance in Tampa. They are using workload, and so I would say the two things that would be for young pitchers is look into Modus sleeves to keep arm health, but you also really need to develop the velocity before you start trying to really make significant changes on Rapsodo, because you throw harder, the harder it is for a hitter. It's that simple.
Modus sleeves. You just mentioned that. For people that aren't familiar with that, what is a Modus sleeve?
It's a sleeve that you put on your arm, and there's a sensor in the sleeve. It sounds a little bit invasive, but you don't even notice it's on your arm. And this is another rabbit hole that I've gone down with Casey over at Kinetic Pro. I've gone over to his probably 3 or 4 times, and we've talked for, on average, probably 3 hours at a time, and I'm just now getting a full grasp of this. But it measures workload, and it's finding out that the majority of injuries of the arm are when there is a massive spike in the amount of workload that you're doing. So to put it in simplest terms as possible is that for the high school season and for college season, a lot of injuries happen in February because you have less than a month of practice, and then you go right into games, and some pitchers are throwing up to 100 pitches, and their arm's not nearly ready for it because the spike in workload is so high. And that's what a Modus sleeve does, is it monitors the amount of throws that you have and the torque, or basically the wear and tear it puts on your arm.
Gotcha. So for hitters, have you used a Rapsodo or TrackMan or Diamond Kinetics or anything else for hitters?
This past falls, I've been trying to use Diamond Kinetics for the past year, but I've finally got the grasp on it of what I want to do. So I've used Diamond Kinetics, and I've also just started using Blast. Those are the two lowest hanging fruits because they're so much cheaper than Rapsodo and TrackMan. So we use those here at Maryville, and hopefully one day we'll be able to get Rapsodo for hitting and pitching. But on the hitting front, it's vital to have a Rapsodo if you can, because just see how development is going if you are trending in the right direction. And when using a Rapsodo for hitting, the two main metrics that you're looking at would be exit velocity and launch angle, because you can look at different data metrics for professional baseball, and there are specific numbers that virtually equal a home run every time. And so that could be a target point for you because the Rapsodo metrics are live. You can see them right in front of you, and you know exactly what you need to get to. That you need to get to a certain launch angle and with a certain exit velocity, and that equals a home run. So
your players now that you've got, are you sort of have something across the board that all players are shooting for as far as especially their launch angle? Obviously, exit velocity is going to be a little bit different from guy to guy. I'm sure they're trying to get better with that. But do you have a certain launch angle that you like all players to kind of sit at, or does that depend on the type of hitter, or does that depend on the exit velocity for the player? How exactly do you determine what the optimal launch angle is for your team, for individual players?
Well, we don't have anything at Maryville yet to measure launch angle, so that's not a huge talking point. But the main talking point that I came into our fall, which again was tough because it's only 16 days for Division III that I got to work with these guys. But the main thing is that we got to get the ball in the air, and everyone's getting the ball in the air. No matter if you can only hit the ball 200 feet, you still have to hit that line drive over the shortstop. You know, you got to get that ball in the air. It doesn't matter if you're the smallest guy on the team, the biggest guy on the team. But the one thing I will say is using the eyes visually for launch angle, the launch angle is definitely going to be lower for guys with less power because of that we're not aiming for home runs. We're aiming for line drives in the gap. So if you have a higher exit velocity, the higher the launch angle can be because the farther it'll go. But just having the philosophy of getting the ball in the air, I can go into what we use Diamond Kinetics for with that. If you want, I don't want them to blend together, you know.
Right. No, it's good. And if you don't mind kind of interjecting, I think when some coaches that aren't real crazy about, you know, some of the new things that are out there, especially, you know, focus on launch angle, some coaches hear about, you know, getting the ball in the air, and I think the translation to that is sometimes, you know, a fly ball. But in your world,
right,
in the air just means not on the ground.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about you know, what you're doing with Diamond Kinetics and Blast and kind of the things that they measure. And I'd like to talk just about how exactly you know, take the data that you're getting there. So what is the Diamond Kinetics and the Blast? It's Blast Motion, right? Is that what it's called?
Right.
What are those
Right.
measuring for you, TJ, with the hitters?
So they have a bunch of different metrics, and I actually went to a conference a few weeks ago, Slugfest, and I've actually got a lot better understanding of all the metrics. But this past fall, with getting the ball in the air as a goal for our team, the one metric that I wanted everyone focusing on was attack angle, because it's that just measures whether you're swinging down or up, and it's been talked about since the science of hitting with Ted Williams, is that a slight uppercut is the best approach to hitting because the ball is coming down, and you should slightly swing up to match the plane so you have the most opportunity to hit the ball. So one of our goals was for everyone to be positive in their averages with their attack angle. And I made a little graph with the help of Diamond Kinetics over the month period that we had to work with the guys, and we did see improvement in attack angle. So that's the biggest thing we did over the fall, and we'll be doing more development in the spring. And that's another thing that I'm passionate about too, is for players who are not seeing the playing time that they need during the spring, is that we're still developing them. So that's something else I could talk about.
That's something I think good programs do a lot, and something that is really difficult for players to go through, is to be in a position where you're not playing. I think to have coaches that clearly care about the development is probably a really important part of the program, and something that's going to definitely sustain success. I want to stick on just Diamond Kinetics and Blast Motion a little bit. Just talk about, when you talk about attack angle, for someone that's not familiar with that term, because that, you know, every swing obviously at some point is going to come down, and at some point every swing does end up going uphill a little bit. So where exactly, what part of the swing is the attack angle? What part of the swing is the attack angle?
So they actually, Diamond Kinetics uses approach angle, which might be a little bit better term, because it's the you approaching the baseball. So the right before you make contact with the baseball, because a lot of people have been taught to swing down to the baseball to create the backspin, and that's where the negative attack angles come from. So you basically, I guess one way to put it is a lot of people are top hand strong if you're coming straight down to the ball using using the top hand more like a hammer. That would create a negative attack angle. But if you're going to try to get the barrel in the zone early and then work up to the baseball, that'll create a positive attack angle.
So kind of just a question for a lot of people out there who don't have access to Diamond Kinetics or to Blast. You're just sitting in a cage using your eyes. How can a player kind of have an idea of what their attack angle is? If you're hitting off of a tee or hitting BP, when you're not actually measuring anything, TJ, what do you want to see your hitters doing? Like, what do you want the ball to be doing coming off their bat?
If I could make it simple as possible, I want a nice, smooth, slight uppercut to a baseball, creating a line drive to the gap.
Okay, so a line drive will be over the infielders.
So, right.
Okay.
Yeah, especially at the Division III level, because we don't have as physically mature men as Division I does. So it's as we spoke before, our launch angles are going to be not significantly, but are definitely going to be average. We want them to average lower than, per se, a Division I power hitter.
Okay. I think most high school players are probably in that boat, even guys that project to play in Division I when they're 15, 16 years old. They're probably not as physically mature as they will be, and certainly you don't want to see guys just in the box flying out. And I think that I've always thought as a hitting coach that, kind of like you said, the line drives that are over the infielders' heads, that's going to work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How hard you're hitting the ball. Let's talk about development a little bit with your players there. So a player that you've got that's not seeing the field as much as they want for one reason or another, how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them to a point where they are still hungry to come to the field and work and get better to where they can earn their playing time? Is there any secret behind that when you're dealing with players?
The data's been a huge help, and whether it be in the weight room, offensively, defensively, I try to show them as many statistics, numbers as possible of what they need to improve and where they need to be, so that it's not just open-ended. It's just like, I have no idea what I need to do to see the field. I try to show them whether if someone's lacking bat speed, if their bat is really slow through the zone. Something that we're going to be doing during the spring is with guys that, as of now, and it definitely could change. That's the biggest thing I always iterate. If you're in this program and you start lacing balls in scrimmages, you're going to get your shot. Just because you're in your program doesn't mean you're never going to see the field. But we try to get them, if their back speed is lacking and they're really slow through the zone, we get them on a bat speed program. And that's something that, using these sensors and radar guns, that we can show them that you are trending in the right direction or you're trending in the wrong direction. And that's the whole picture. That's why I'm such a big believer in the whole picture, because of sometimes if someone's trending down in the wrong direction on the field, if they're looking sluggish, if they're running slower, if they're doing all this, then what's happening in the weight room? Are they getting pushed too hard there? Are they not getting enough sleep? Are they is something going wrong in their life? It's so much more than just the certain things that's going wrong for them not seeing the field. So
it's probably a lot easier of a conversation to have with a player when you can use some numbers and really show them, like, this needs to get better if you're going to play here, as opposed to just, before all this tech was really available, where it was just kind of a conversation like, hey, so-and-so is better than you, and until you get better, you're not going to see the field. It's just not as specific of a conversation. So that's a really good thing and a good way to use the tech.
Yeah, 100%. And just actually having, so the one thing is telling them that these numbers improve, and then actually giving them the full plan of what we're going to be doing helps too.
Last question, TJ, and then I will let you go. It's I got out of college coaching after the 2014 season when you kind of heard about some of these things and you start going to tournaments and seeing TrackMan and you start seeing spin rates from guys and you weren't really sure what you were looking at yet. But as a guy who's not involved in college baseball anymore, it's really kind of intimidating to, to hear about all the technology out there and almost like you've got to spend a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot just to understand all this stuff just to really be able to be the best coach you can. Do you find, you're in the game, you're involved in it, do you find that it's intimidating that all the stuff that's out there and, that other teams might be using different things or, coaching in different ways that you guys aren't? Is it an intimidating thing to you or is it something to you that is, it's, I don't know, maybe just it's exciting because it's out there for you. Just be honest.
No, 100%. I mean, you hit it on the nail. The past, up until this summer, I was terrified of how much I didn't know. Because because in my previous blog, like I said, I think it's a big thing that if you don't have this technology and you want to be a college coach, you gotta pony up the money and figure out how to do it because everyone's doing it. And I was freaking out because I had no idea. And if you're in that position and you're truly passionate about learning it, you have to find a way to get to a place that'll allow you to sit down and just think about it for hours on end. Because when I was at Eckerd and St. Pete, some things that weren't mentioned is that I did Uber Eats. I did Lyft. I
worked for those
last
places.
December. That last December, I was driving for Amazon. I was working 12-hour days, and I never had the time to sit down and really figure it out. So if you are truly passionate about all this technology, it takes time. That's the only thing you say is that you have to take the time to go and read articles, listen to podcasts, and slowly put it all together.
It's awesome. And there's there's so much out there, and you mentioned some of the really good people to follow that you can follow on social media that kind of, give you some pointers here or there or help you to understand some things. And there's certainly a lot of resources out there. Hopefully, TJ, we could have you maybe back on another podcast and talk about some more things like this. But it's certainly been great talking with you. I appreciate your perspective and someone with just a unique background. And I believe that Maryville is going to do a lot of really good things when you're there. TJ Wharton, everybody, he's the recruiting coordinator and hitting coach, as well as the sports performance coordinator at Maryville College, a Division III school in Maryville, Tennessee. He's got videos on the Figure It Out Baseball website. You can check out all of his videos for free at figureitoutbaseball.com. Coach Wharton, it's been a pleasure having you here today. I sincerely appreciate your time and all the information and the personal information that you shared with us today.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me, Jeff. This was fun.